What's up everybody, welcome back to the channel for another episode of the Ask Me Anything series. It's been a couple of weeks since the last one, but that's for good reason because there just isn't as much to talk about right now with us being in the Stanley Cup Finals. There's not multiple series going on at once, so although we will be talking a little bit about the Stanley Cup Finals, there is going to be a lot of off-season, free agency, draft questions and stuff like that in this video, and I'm sure you guys are going to be fine with that anyways. And as always, I want to give a huge thank you to every single one of you who took the time to come up with a question and leave it on the post. Even the ones that don't get featured in the video, just know I read every single one. I appreciate all of them. So with that all being said, let's get into today's episode. The first question comes from Hatcher Kane, who says, have you ever considered doubting Tampa's ability to come back from down 2-0 after a horrendous start to the final? Even after dropping the first two games and losing game 2 in the fashion that they lost 7-0, complete domination by Colorado, I still didn't lose all my faith in Tampa Bay winning this series. They've won back-to-back cups for a reason, and there's a saying that a series never really starts until the home team loses, and the home team's yet to lose in this series, so it's still really anyone's game at this point. Colorado had their dominant win in game 2, and then Tampa Bay bounced back with a dominant win in game 3. It's going to be a really intense game 4, I feel like. I don't think it's going to be a lopsided score. The next question we have comes from Gabe, who says, if the Oilers trade Puljujarvi, what do you think the return is? And thank you for the kind words, I really appreciate that. Man, there really is a lot of intriguing players that are in trade rumors right now, Jesse Puljujarvi being one of them, and Capo Caco is kind of in there a little bit, Kevin Fiala, Alex DeBrincat's reportedly available. Ethan Bear is another one that came out yesterday that Carolina has actually given him permission to talk to other teams, so it seems like it's going to be time for a deal or no deal here soon. Let me know if that's something that you guys want to see in the near future. And getting back to your question though, it's kind of hard to say because I feel like you'd probably want a draft pick in there, but I can't imagine Edmonton would want like a draft pick and a prospect in return for Puljujarvi because they're trying to win now. I'd imagine they want a piece that could help them do that. I really don't think Edmonton should trade Puljujarvi unless it's a deal that makes their team better right now. Puljujarvi's still young, he's only 24 years old, he's now strung together 2 really productive seasons in a row. Obviously this most recent playoff run, he didn't play his greatest and he was pretty quiet for the most part, saw his role get diminished a little bit. That'll happen though. Puljujarvi's still a very solid young two-way winger, and depending on Edmonton's asking price, it might be smart for a team out there to try and go buy low on Puljujarvi after his value is a little bit lower after that playoff run, because in my opinion, I really don't think we've seen Jesse Puljujarvi play his best hockey yet. I think that's still to come. Moving on to the next question, this one comes from Hugh Barkhurst, who says, what do you think Kadri's new contract will/should be? He had perhaps the best contract year of the modern era, so does he hit the jackpot, or do NHL GMs view him as a flash in the pan? This is a really interesting discussion. I feel like Kadri is one of the most intriguing free agents available this offseason because, like you said, he did just have a pretty incredible contract year, the best year of his career by far, one of the league leaders in terms of points per game. But the thing is, Kadri is already 31 years old, and he's going to be 32 right around when next season begins, so I don't really know if he's the kind of guy you want to give, a 6 to 8 year deal to, even though that's probably what Kadri's going to want after the year that he just had. I think it's pretty clear that Nazem Kadri is going to get paid this offseason, and deservedly so. I would imagine an AAV somewhere between 7 and 9 million, in that range, wherever it may be, closer to 7, closer to 9, who knows. I'm really just intrigued to see what the term on a Nazem Kadri deal looks like, because obviously if you give him 6 to 8 years at his current age, there's a lot of risk involved, especially if you're paying him, $8 million a season or something. Ideally, I feel like, especially when you consider the money that you're going to have to pay him, you probably want the term somewhere in like the 3 to 4 year range, but I don't really think there's any way that's going to happen. There's going to be a team out there willing to give him what he wants. The next question we have comes from Gibby, who says, do you think the NHL should try to follow the NBA's footsteps in awarding an MVP award in the conference finals? And thank you for the kind words. I really can't see how it would hurt. It would get people talking, spark more discussion, and there's already conference trophies. I can't remember what they're called off the top of my head. I think one's the Prince of Wales, one's the Clarence S. Campbell, but I'm not sure which one's for which conference. But I do think that would be kind of cool when the teams win the conference finals and they're getting their pictures with the trophies and whatever. Why not name a conference finals MVP too for each conference final? I think that could be pretty cool. And of course, have them be named after an NHL legend from the 80s or 90s or something. Like the NBA ones, I think, are named after Larry Bird and Magic Johnson, so maybe like, Wayne Gretzky for one, obviously, Mario Lemieux for the other. Next up, this question comes from Jackson Manning, who says, do you think that the Leafs or Calgary should make a big splash in the offseason or just make some minor adjustments in the roster so they can stay competitive in the next season? And again, thank you for the kind words. In the case of the Calgary Flames, I feel like they should just be more focused on bringing the same team back, or most of the same team, as opposed to making a big splash. Like, you got to try and re-sign Johnny Gaudreau. Obviously, Mangiapane and Tkachuk are both RFAs. They need new deals, and they're both going to be pretty big deals, I'd imagine. So that should definitely be Calgary's priority there. In terms of Toronto, it's a little bit different. I feel like they just have to shore up the goaltending position. Obviously, with Jack Campbell being a UFA, whether they try to bring him back or go a different route, there's a lot of talk about Ville Husso potentially. It also doesn't seem like Toronto's all that interested in having Peter Mrazek on the team next season, so he's a guy that I think will probably get traded sometime this summer if they can move that contract. But in terms of like a big splash for the Leafs, I don't really think that's necessary, and I feel differently about that than I did, in years past. I thought it was time to change up the core a little bit after that loss against Montreal, but this season I feel like they showed that they really are close. One game against the Lightning, they literally had a chance to win it in Game 6 overtime. They were this close, and now of course, look at where the Tampa Bay Lightning are. I think you can definitely build off that heading into next season and bring, most of the same team back. Moving on now, this question comes from AK Games 52. With the endless rumors going around, should the Devils move the second overall pick for a more proven player? If so, who would make the most sense? If not, should they draft Cooley or Slavkovsky? Honestly, I'm kind of on board with the New Jersey Devils moving that draft pick for a more proven player. I feel like if it is a proven player, you still want them to be relatively young, fit the timeline of the likes of Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, Jesper Bratt, and the young core that they have there. Somebody like an Alex DeBrincat maybe, or Kevin Fiala, one of those guys. The Devils already have a ton of young talent on the roster, like I just said, Hughes, Bratt, Hischier. Obviously, you can throw Dawson Mercer into there after the good rookie season he just had, and they have more young players coming. Like Alexander Holtz is probably going to be a mainstay on the Devils next season. They got a great young core, and they obviously made the splash to bring in Dougie Hamilton last offseason as kind of a win now move. They want to start winning games, and I feel like trading the second overall pick for a proven but still relatively young player would, have them a lot closer to where they want to be. Next up, we have a question from Jason. What's your prediction for the Flyers next season with Torts behind the bench? Could they surprise everyone and make the playoffs? I definitely don't think the playoffs are out of the question for the Philadelphia Flyers. There's still talent on that roster, and John Tortorella has a track record, especially, the first couple years with his team, of getting the best out of what he has. The thing is, even if Philadelphia does squeak into the playoffs as, a third seed in the division or a wildcard team or something like that, are they really a threat to go anywhere once they make the playoffs? That's the thing. That's really why I never got the John Tortorella signing in the first place. I really feel like Philadelphia should be at least trying to retool a little bit, head into a smaller rebuild, but after the Tortorella signing, it appears that's definitely not what Philadelphia is doing. Tortorella is a win-now coach. He's not a guy you bring in to, groom young players and, try to develop guys through a rebuild. That's not his style. Now, I will say, I do think John Tortorella, the person, the character, the coach, fits the mold of Philadelphia, everything the city of Philadelphia is about, but I just feel like the timing's a little bit weird on this one. Moving on now, this question comes from Nathan H., who says, do you think Kuzmenko will make an impact on the Canucks? So for those of you who don't know, one of the top players in the KHL this past season, Andrei Kuzmenko, a 26-year-old winger, has signed with the Vancouver Canucks, had 53 points in 45 games in the KHL this past season, 20 of which were goals. I like this move by the Canucks, low risk, potentially high reward, but when it comes to, bringing players over from the KHL, you really never know what's going to happen. You could have the next Vadim Shipachev, like Vegas, or you could have the next Panarin or Kaprizov, or something in between. You really never know how a guy's game is going to translate from the KHL to the NHL. I don't know much about the player. All I know is he put up good numbers the past couple of years, especially this past season, and it's probably worth a shot for Vancouver. Moving on now, this next question comes from Epic Cactus Gamer. Do you think Cale Makar will hit 1,000 points by the end of his career? Judging by the pace he's on right now, at just 23 years old, already has 180 points in just 178 games. Unless he has a serious injury at some point in his career, I feel like he probably finishes comfortably over 1,000 career points. And now for the final question of this episode, this one comes from I Am Bamman, who says, what will Nashville do this offseason? Will they retool or prepare for a small rebuild? And thank you for the kind words. I feel like when it comes to Nashville's future, it all depends on if they re-sign Philip Forsberg or if he walks in free agency, because say if they do lock him up and it's likely going to be a long-term big money deal, that would mean you have Forsberg locked up for big money, Matt Duchene, Roman Josi, they extended Matthias Ekholm already, you have a great goaltender in UC Saros. That's certainly not an awful core at all. They made the playoffs this year, although they got demolished by Colorado when they got there, but they still made the playoffs. I think they have enough there to be competitive, but if they don't re-sign Philip Forsberg and he signs somewhere else, because obviously anything can happen in free agency, then that could be a sign for Nashville to potentially head towards, maybe a little bit of a rebuild or just a small retool, something like that. So that is going to wrap up today's episode of the Ask Me Anything series. I apologize for the length. I wanted to make it a little bit longer, but I'm sure you can tell by my voice, I'm not really feeling the greatest today. Still really enjoyed this though. There was a lot of interesting questions. Obviously, if you guys have any thoughts on any of the things we talked about today, be sure to leave them down below in the comment section. I'm always interested to hear what you guys have to say. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to leave it a like. That is the best way to show your support. And most importantly, if this was your first time checking out the channel and you want more NHL content just like this, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I'll talk to you all soon.